performance of contract, meaning performance of contract fulfillment of obligations. Performance of contract, meaning fulfillment of obligations to the contract. According to Section 37, the parties of the contract must either perform or offer to perform the respective promise. Perform or offer to perform their respective promise unless an agreed it dispense with or excuse under the provisions of the Contract Act or any other law type. On the basis of Section 37, performance of contract can be actual or attempted actually performed. When a party to contract has done, party had to undertaken to do either of the promised parties has fulfilled their obligation under the contract within a time and in the manner prescribed. Offer to perform or attempt performance or tender of performance. It may be happening sometimes when the performance becomes used, the promise offers performance obligation, the promissory offers performance obligation, but the promissory refused to accept the performance. The promissory to deliver certain goods to be takes the goods to the appointed place during the business hour, but we refuse to take the delivery of the goods. This is an attempt performance as the promiser has done what he was required to do under the contract. Conditions are to be satisfied for a valid standards or attempt performance. It must be unconditional. It must be proper date and time and place, reasonable opportunity of examining the goods. It must be whole obligation. So, whole obligation मतलब ऐसे ऐसे सीन है तो पटल with why the manager of a theatre or to sings a theatre to nights weeks during the month of buying guests to bill around thousands to each night performance. On the sixth night, X willfully absent his herself for the night performance by the liberty to put an end of the contract. By whom must contract may be performed? Section 40, 41, 42. 40. Section 40 कहता है promisor himself if there is something in the contract to show that it was the intention of the parties that the promissory should be performed by the promisor himself. Such promise must be performed by the promisor. This means contract which involves the exercise of personal skills and diligence. मतलब जिसमें पर्सनल स्किल्स एंड इंटेलिजेंसी होता है और विच आर फाउंडेड बाय personal confidence between the parties. Personal confidence between the parties must be performed by the promisor himself. A promisor should paint a picture for B. The must be performed by promisor himself. Agent, where the personal consideration is not the foundation of a contract. Agent, where the personal consideration is not found the foundation of a contract. The promisor or his representative may employ competent person to it. Legal representative. A contract which involves the use of personal skills or founded on personal consideration. Legal representatives का होता है contract which involves the use of personal skills or is founded on personal considerations comes to an end on the death of a promisor as regards any contract any other contract. The legal representative or disease promisor are bound to perform it unless a contrary intentions appear from the contract. Section 32(7) para 2. But the liability under a contract is limited to the value of property they inherit from disease partner. मतलब जितनी प्रॉपर्टी उनको अपने प्रोसेस से मिली उतनी में ही उनको करना पड़ेगा, उससे ज़्यादा का वो लायबल नहीं रहेगा. कारण में है दबदबा दबदबा. The effect of accepting performance from third party. Section 41. Promisee accept performance of promisee from a third person. He cannot afterward impose it against the promiser that is performance by a stranger if the third person. Effect of accepting performance from third person. Section 41. When a promisee accepts performance from third person, he cannot afterward enforce it against the promiser. This is the performance by a stranger if accepted by the promiser. This result in discharging the promiser, although the latter has neither authorized nor ratified the act of third party. Joint promiser. When two or more persons had made a joint promise, intention appear by the contract. All such persons must jointly fulfill the promise. If any of them dies, his legal representative must jointly with the surviving promiser fulfill the promise. If all of them died, the legal representatives of all of them must fulfill the promise jointly. Distinction between succession and assignment. Distinction between legal concepts, visa, succession and assignment will be noted carefully. When the benefits of a contract are succeed to by process of law, then both burden and benefit attaching to the contract may sometimes devolve on legal hire. Suppose a son succeeds to his estates of father after his death. He will be able to pay the debts and liabilities of father owned during his lifetime. But if the debts owned by his father exceeds the value of his estate and inherited by his son, then the would be capable would not be called upon to pay excess in the other world. The liability of the son will be limited to the extent of the property inherited by them. मतलब जितनी प्रॉपर्टी बाप से मिलेगी बेटा उतने के लिए लायबल है, उतना ही कर्ज वो चुका सकता है. इन द मैटर ऑफ असाइनमेंट, हाउएवर, the benefits of contract can only be assigned but not the liabilities they are under. This is because when the liability is assigned, a third party gets involved therein. Thus, a debtor cannot relieve himself of his liability or to creditor by assigning to someone else's obligation to repay the debt. फिर पीछे पीछे दबदबा. On the end, if a creditor assigns the benefits of a promisor, he thereby entitled the assignee to release the debt from the debtor. But if where the benefit is coupled with a liability or a personal consideration has entered into the making of the contract, then the benefits cannot be assigned. Devolution of joint liabilities. Section 42. If two or more persons have made a joint promise, ordinarily all of them during their lifetime must jointly fulfill the promise. After the death of any of them, his legal representatives, jointly the survivors or survivors should do so. After the death of last survivor, the legal representative of all promiser must fulfill the promise. क्या है devaluations, liability of joint promiser and promisor. If two or more persons have made a joint promise, ordinarily all of them during the lifetime, them must be jointly fulfill the promise. After the death of any of them, the legal representative jointly with the survivors or survivors should do so. After the death of last survivor, the legal representative of all original promises must fulfill the promise. मतलब आपको प्रॉमिस तो फुलफिल करना ही पड़ेगा, चाहे इस कान से पकड़ो उस कान से पकड़ो. दब दबा फिर पीछे पीछे चले में तो कब दबा. We have seen that the section 42 deals with the voluntary discharge of obligation by joint promisers, but if they do not discharge their obligations on their own volitions, what will be happen? This is section 43 revolves. Any of them joint promiser may be compelled to perform section 43. When two or more persons make a joint promise, the promisee may, in the absence of an express agreement to the contrary, compel anyone or more of the joint promises to the whole of the promise. Each promiser may compel contribution. Each of two or more promiser, if for two or more promiser, अरे भाई लाइक भी कर देना जो भी देख रहे हैं यार. मैंने पढ़ लिया था यार ये. Breach of contract and its remedies. Mm, Breach of means failures of a party to perform his obligations, his or her obligations under a contract. Breach of actual breach of contract, anticipatory breach of contract, anticipatory breach of contract and breach of contract. Anticipatory and breach of contract. Anticipatory breach of contract is a contract with a breach of contract occurring before the time fixed for the performing as arrived. When the promisor refused to altogether to perform his promise and signifies his willingness even before the time of performance has arrived, which is called anticipatory breach of contract. मतलब anticipate है, मेरे को पता है कि वो breach of contract होने ही वाला है. Anticipatory breach of contract may take either of the following two ways: expressed by word or written, spoken, expressed by word, spoken or written, and immediately by the conduct of one party. मतलब मेरे को पता चल गया है. The time fixed for the performance has arrived, मतलब arrived हो चुका है, लेकिन अभी तक उसने कुछ किया नहीं है. Section 39. The Indian Contract Act deals with the anticipatory breach of contract provide as follows. When the parties to the contract has refused to perform or disable himself from performing his promise in his entirety, and three, the promise may put and the contract unless he has signed he has signified but words or his conduct or his acquisition in the nature entirety, the promise may put an end to the contract unless it is defined by words of conduct. His acquisition in continuance. It is in continuance. Effect of anticipatory breach. The promise is excused from performing or from further performance. Further, he gets an option to either treat the contract as signed and sue the other parties for damage from breach of contract immediately without waiting until the due date of performance, or he may elect not to resign but treat the contract. He may elect to either to treat the contract as resigns and sue the other party for damage from performing breach of contract immediately without waiting until the due date of performance, or he may elect not to resign but the treat either effective anticipatory breach. The promise is excused for performing the promise. The promise is excused from performance or from further performance. Further gets an options to either treat the contract is rent and sue the other parties for damage from breach of contract immediately without waiting until the due date of performance, or he may elect not to resign but the treat the contract as still operative and wait for time and performance, and then hold the other party responsible for the consequences of non-performance. But in the case he will keep the eye keep the contract alive with for the benefits of other party as well. He his own and guilty part if he so decides, or reconsideration may still perform this part of contract and can also take advantage of any supervening impossibility which may have the effect of discharging the contract. Actual breach of contract. In the contrast of anticipatory breach, in the case of the refusal to perform the promise or scheduled date, the parties are to a law contract and bound to perform their respective promise. But when one of the party break the contract by refusing the performance his promise, he is said to have commit a breach. In that case, the party to the contract obtain a right of action against the one who has refused to perform his promise. Actual breach of contract may be committed. Actual breach of contract may be committed at the time of the time when the performance of this contract is due. During the performance of the contract, actual breach of contract also occurs when during the performance of the contract, only party fails or refuses to perform his obligation under the Word Act. Remedies available: suit for damage, designs of contract, suit for specific performance, suit for injection, suit for quantum merit. During the performance, actual breach of contract also occurs when during the performance of the contract only one party fails to or refuses to perform his obligation related by expressed or implied act. Suit for damage. Suit for damage. The Act of Section 2073 has laid down the rules of the amount, rules laid down the rules how the amount of consideration is determined. On the breach of the contract, the party who suffered from such a breach of contract breach is entitled to receive from the party who had broken the contract compensation for any loss or damage caused to him by breach. Compensation can also be claimed. Hello, Lakshmi Verma 25. Hello, hi. To get rich like Ambani. Rohan. Compensation can also be claimed for any loss or damage which naturally arise in the usual course of events. A compensations can also be claimed. Compensation can also be claimed for any loss or damage which the party knew when they entered into contract as likely to result from the breach. That is to say, special damage can be claimed only on a previous notice, but the party suffering from the breach is bound to take reasonable steps to minimize the loss. No compensations is payable for any remote or indirect loss. No compensation is payable for any remote or indirect loss. General, ordinary, special, vindictive or exemplary damage. Nominal damage for deteriorations caused by delay, prefix damage. CF Foundation Regional Units gets more marks in contract. sued for damages. Section 73 has laid down that one of the breach of the party who suffers from such a breach of entitled to receive the ordinary damage. When a contract has been broken, the party who suffers by the breach is entitled to get the will broken the contract compensation for any loss of term which caused by him thereby which may be wrong in the usual course of things from such breach or which the party will know when they made the contract to be likely the events of the breach of the commercial is not being given by any remote or indirect loss or damage sustained by reasons of breach. Section 73 of Act and the rule is Hadley and the or when a contract has been broken, the party who suffers by the breach is entitled to receive from the party who has broken the contract compensation from for any loss or damage caused by him, thereby which naturally arise in the usual course of things from such a breach or which the parties know when they made the contract to be likely to result from the breach of it. Such compensation is not given for any remote and indirect loss or damage sustained by the reasons of such compensation is not given any remote and indirect loss or damage sustained by the reasons of breach. Section 73 of the name of the Contract Act and the rules in the Hadley versus Baxendale. Hadley versus Baxendale fact. The crankshaft of P-floor mills had broken. He gives it to D. a common carrier who promised to deliver it to the foundry in 2 days, where the new staff was to be made. The mill stopped working. D delayed the delivery of crankshaft. So the mill remained idle for another 5 days. P received the crankshaft after 7 days later than he would otherwise. It is positively peacefully which damage the delay of delivering the broken part, but also for loss of profit suffered by the mill for not being will not have been worked. The counter held that P was entitled only to the ordinary damage, or D was not liable for any loss of profit because the only performance given by P was the article to be carried was broken shaft of the mill. Broken shaft of a mill, and it was not made unknown to them that the delay would result in the loss. Special damage. Where a party to a contract receives a notice of special circumstance affecting the contract, he will be liable not only for the damage arising from it, damage arising naturally, and then special damage. मतलब जो स्पेशल डैमेज के लिए भी लाइबल हो, मतलब उसने पहले बता दिया कि अगर तुम इतना लॉस को तो रॉबर्ट तक जाना पड़ेगा. डिलीवर टू अ मशीन to be a common carrier to convey to a mill without delay. He also informed B that the mill was stopped for want of machine. B unreasonable delay the delivery of machines, and in consequence A lost a profitable contract with government. In case A is entitled to see B compensation the average amount of profit which would be made by running the mill during the period of delay, but he cannot recover the loss sustained by due to the government contract as the contract is government got of the notice of B. मतलब नोटिस नहीं था B को उसके बारे में, मतलब ये तो पता होता तो B नहीं करता है चुल्लबाजी. Vindictory and exemplary damage. और exemplary vindictory और exemplary damage और अथवा मतलब सेम ही है दोनों, मिलिट्री और एग्जाम्पलरी डैमेज, ऐसा नहीं कि दोनों अलग अलग है। भाई अपने ड्रीम्स के बारे में किसी को बताना भाई ये कोई बात नहीं हुई, लेकिन तुम कमेंट में लिख के जा सकते हो ताकि तुम्हें ऐसा लगे कि मैं हाँ मैं कर सकता हूँ। यू हैव टू गिव इट ब्रो, जब तक आप बोलना नहीं सीखोगे तब तक आप कर नहीं पाओगे। जाने दो। सुन रहा है तू Vindictory and exemplary damage. These damages may awarded only in two cases: for the breach of promise to marry because it caused injuries of her feeling. मतलब ये इमोशंस के लिए होता है विंडिक्टरी डैमेज। और पता है मेरे पेपर में आया था भाई, मैं पता नहीं तो कोई याद ही नहीं आ रहा था पता है। It is caused injury to her feelings or her feelings and the wrongful dishonor of a banker. The customer checks because in the case of injury due to wrongful dishonor, drawing of checks it is so heavy that it causes loss of credit and reputation to him. Businessman whose credit was suffered exemplary damage even if he genuine pain in loss, but a non-trader cannot get heavy damages like circumstance unless the damage are alleged and proved as special damages given versus Westminster Banks। कुछ तो केस में हुआ था। होठों पे नाम तेरा दिल की धड़कन। Nominal damages are awarded with plaintiff has proved that there has been a breach of contract, but he has not in fact suffered any real damages awarded just to establish the right to decree for the breach of contract। For the breach of contract amount may be a rupee even पैसा। मतलब भाई 1 रुपये से लेके 10 पैसा तक भी दे सकते हैं अगर तुम्हें मतलब कोई नुकसान नहीं हुआ है और कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बचाना ही है और मतलब कोई विंडिक्टरी और एग्जाम्पलरी डैमेज दिखा। मतलब भाई तुमने अब केस किया है तो केस का परिणाम तो देना पड़ेगा। और इंडिया का कानून तो जानते ही हो, आपको पट्टी लगी होती है उसकी। तो भैया इसके कारण वो होगा, वो तुम्हें देगा विंडिक्टरी और एग्जाम्पलरी डैमेज। डाटा अलर्ट आ गया भाई मेरे 50% डाटा अलर्ट आ गया इतनी देर में। मैं तो पता है पूरा लिख के आ सकता था भाई, इतना आसान था ये विंडिक्टरी और एग्जाम्पलरी डैमेज। यार पता है बस एक शादी वाली नहीं लिख पाया मैं, इमोशंस के लिए था विंडिक्टरी और एग्जाम। पता है उस टाइम भाई माइंड क्लिक ही नहीं कर रहा था। उस टाइम अगर माइंड ने क्लिक कर लिया होता ना थोड़ा सा भी कि क्या है विंडिक्टरी और एग्जाम्पलरी डैमेज, अब भाई माइंड उस टाइम पता है पेपर में क्लिक ही नहीं कर रहा था कि क्या है यार विंडिक्टरी और एग्जाम्पलरी डैमेज। मतलब भाई बिल्कुल बोलते ना याद ही नहीं था बिल्कुल, मतलब माइंड से आउट भाई दिमाग में। पता है मैंने इतना ज़ोर दे दिया भाई कुछ दिमाग में आ ही नहीं रहा कि विंडिक्टरी और एग्जाम्पलरी डैमेज क्या होता है। पता है क्या है, कुछ नहीं है। शादी से मना कर दिया इसे कहते हैं विंडिक्टरी डैमेज, मतलब फीलिंग्स हर्ट हो गई बस इतना सा था भाई। कोई भाई मैं पता इतना भी मेरे को लग रहा है ना भाई, मतलब पेपर में कोई याद क्यों नहीं आया भाई, इतना आसान था भाई। अब याद आ रहा है, बताना भाई अब क्या याद आएगा तुम। Nominal damage is awarded with the plaintiff has proved there has been breach of contract but has not in fact suffered any real damage। It was awarded just to establish right of degree। मतलब राइट डिग्री इस्टेब्लिश करने के लिए 1 रुपये से 10 पैसे तक का तुम डैमेज दे सकते हो। कोर्ट ऑर्डर दे देगा कि तुम 10 पैसे पे कर दो। No. bound to be done.